Well, let's start then with some introductions. I'll go first. I'm one of the judges. I'm happy to be here today. My name is Tiffany Curry. I'm the Chief Compliance Officer at AMD. We make AI chips based in Austin, Texas. You want to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Lisa Laird. I'm the Chief Investment Officer of Mercy Investment Services, which is a values-based investment company for nuns, at the Sisters of Mercy specifically. And so, and I'm delighted to be here, and I'm really looking forward to your presentation. Also, I'm out of St. Louis.
Okay, great. So let me start then by just reading some opening comments to set the groundwork here for the presentation. In this part of the competition, as you know, you're taking on a fictional business identity and assigning a fictional business identity to the judges. Please make sure that everyone knows who you are and who they are before you begin. You will have 25 minutes to describe the legal, financial, and ethical dimensions of the problem and to recommend a solution that passes muster on all three counts. During this time, teams will be uninterrupted. And when you're finished, the judges will ask you questions for 10 to 15 minutes, maybe a little less. During the Q&A, both you and the judges will stay in pair, but after the Q&A, the judges will give you feedback outside. So is the team ready to begin?
Yep, I believe we're all good. And I just want to take a second to thank you guys for being here. We really appreciate your time. And we're looking forward to presenting for you guys.
Let's go ahead and start 25 minutes.
Can everyone hear me? Sorry, I'm just checking in. Okay. Monsanto was once a leading agrochemical company well known by most in the United States. So how did it become a business doomed to fail? Hello, Bayer executives. We are AgriTech Consulting, and this is Rewriting Monsanto's Past, the Ethics of Agricultural Technologies. Hi, my name is Dhruvi Patel. I'm your strategy specialist.
My name is Micah Bale. I'm also one of the strategy specialists.
My name is Yoni Mann, and I'm your analyst.
My name is Gabriela Puig, and I'm your financial specialist.
Let's go over a brief agenda of today. We will start with a brief introduction, an analysis, a strategy, our financials, and we will end with our conclusion.
For our analysis, we wanted to look at the role the agriculture industry has in the United States as a whole. So it makes up around 5.5% of the US GDP, and it accounts for around 10.4% of the US employment. As well as it is undergoing continuous development and innovation, and in the future years and decades, we will see this industry grow more and more. And we also want to talk about agricultural technologies because this is what we're focusing on. So what these are is this was the drive of innovation in this industry right now. So not only does it increase productivity and efficiency and lowers costs, but also leads to healthier and safer results and focuses on the environment by reducing that ecological and environmental impact that is so dreadful in this current situation. And then Bayer. So Bayer is a Fortune 500 company, and it is the leader and one of the largest pharmaceutical and agricultural companies in the world. It is based in over 80 countries and has 340 consolidated companies within it. And it also accounts for the largest share in the pesticide manufacturing industry, holding 29.6% of industry revenue. This is a huge and major company and is incredibly important to this industry.
All of our solutions will be based on Bayer's values and mission statement to ensure alignment with the company direction. So now I'll be digging deeper into the company values. Starting with this acronym, LIFE, they prioritize leadership, which is growing themselves and others to lead with purpose, integrity to act sustainably and to be a role model, as well as to build trust, collaborate, and connect with others, to ensure flexibility, which is to create value with the customer, to innovate and experiment and to go digital, and to prioritize efficiency, which is to be accountable and courageous to empower others. Now on to Bayer's mission. Their stated mission is to create health for all and hunger for none. And this introduces the delicate ethical balance between our two UN Sustainability Development Goals that we have identified. So we've emphasized a solution that supports zero hunger efforts while not also being at the detriment of life on land. We can't ignore the most pressing problems in our world today to solve another. So we can't take one and place it above the other, especially when we believe that we can achieve both of these simultaneously.
So really quickly, I want to talk about Monsanto. So Monsanto was founded in 1901 and is operating in over 66 countries, and it engineered the famous herbicide Roundup. However, Roundup has glyphosate, which is carcinogenic. And this is really, really important because legally it faced a lot of issues. It faced a lot of lawsuits, it faced a lot of claims, and overall it actually harmed biodiversity and the environment as a whole and went against the interests of Bayer. So really quickly, Bayer actually acquired Monsanto. So in 2016 was originally when that deal was announced. And since then, they paid $63 billion in the original deal. And this was actually noted to be one of the worst corporate deals. Not only did they have to pay over $10 billion in damages since then in 2020, but they also faced regulatory challenges and just insane antitrust concerns when it came to this company. And overall, it just hurt the company a lot more than it helped it.
So these are two examples of pledges that Bayer has made towards sustainability and zero hunger. The pledge on the left is to support 100 million smallholder farmers by 2030 to show that Bayer's progress towards these goals has decreased. I included a picture from their website. It shows their current progress. As you can see, from 2019 to 2022, they contributed $10 million. And then from 2022 to 2023, they could only contribute 1 million. So alongside this pledge, there's a zero hunger pledge they've taken. They actually announced this earlier this year, but the current financial situation regarding their litigation risks and their glyphosate lawsuits has made this mission very difficult. So while Bayer has made significant pledges, as you've seen before, the Monsanto acquisition has proved more harmful than good in regards to meeting these promises. Monsanto's old policies and resources were committed more so towards increasing herbicide use and expansion of monocultures, while also marginalizing GE fixes. Yet experts such as the International Assessment of Agricultural Knowledge, Science, and Technology Department, which is supported by several UN agencies, the World Bank, and dozens of other external countries, have said that non-GE fixes are more cost efficient and should be utilized more. So the acquisition has made it difficult for Bayer to keep their reputation in good standing. The legal and financial issues of this matter include shareholder lawsuits and possible regulatory penalties, along with the obvious ethical issue of low transparency between consumers and companies. There's a lack of accountability, and there is also an existence of an ethical dilemma being made a promise, and the world has changed from the business ethics field guide. We wanted to approach this issue using an environmental and social ethics framework, which prioritizes societal attitudes, actions, and policies to protect and sustain biodiversity and ecological systems.
So as a team, we conducted an in-depth SWOT analysis to really focus at what's at hand. So although there are definitely strengths, especially when it regards to global presence of such a huge and massive company that controls the industry, there are also weaknesses and threats. So weaknesses, we focused on regulatory challenges and the legal effects of this. Also, public relations and public perception can be at an all-time low due to this acquisition and the way that the company went about it. However, there are also opportunities when it comes to innovation and development, as this is a growing industry and this is a growing company. And the impacts of this company are yet to be seen. And then we also did a stakeholder analysis. So we have two primaries: farmers, stakeholders, and investors, and two secondary stakeholders: employees and customers. We felt that employees and customers are focused on company reputation, and also the employees really do care about wages and job security. However, the farmers do directly depend on the product. So if these products are harmful to the environment, that is huge and impacts the farmers greatly. And again, ties into public relations and financial performance for the stakeholders and investors as well.
Now we're going to be looking at the impact of farmers and consumers, as well as to the legality and the environment of the situation. So the impacts to farmers and consumers is overall positive, with increased crop production, increased revenue, and more drought and pesticide-resistant crops. And the environmental and legal concerns are overall more negative, with biodiversity loss, worries about health and environmental effects of biotech food, and also a lack of transparency in the labeling. Now we'll be talking about the sustainability considerations that we need to take into account. These being building healthy soil, minimizing pollution, and promoting biodiversity. These are all things that are very important for our environment, and they are main focuses that we will be advising for Bayer.
So for our executive summary, we really want to focus on our key issue, which is how can we leverage Monsanto's technological potential to help Bayer reach its sustainability and development goals by 2030, increase biodiversity, and promote food security and zero hunger efforts. Micah just covered the goals, but we really want to focus and dive into the strategy as well of how we are actually going to accomplish that.
All right, now to introduce our solution, we brought these two sustainable development goals together, and we created the Bayer to Buyer initiative. So moving on, we will be diving into the first of these three strategies, which is expanding R&D. The four sectors of R&D that we'll be focusing on are plant genetics, herbicide development, pesticide development, and digital tools. So looking at the first one, which is plant genetics, we're going to start by diving into designer seeds. Designer seeds are created by improving traits of native seeds with biotech and gene editing. This allows for increased yields and higher nutritional quality in each of these crops that are produced. This improvement also allows for a reduction in world hunger, and as more crops are cultivated successfully because of it. Now I'll be moving on to transformative traits. One successful story of transformative traits is from a project called Covercress. This improved protein content in the yield of cover crops, and it allowed them to become a low carbon option for feedstock in the biofuel market, which really supports the environmental progress that we are looking to shape. And next, we'll be looking at the herbicide developments as well. So starting with bioherbicides, these are much better than their chemical counterparts. They're made from natural products, and they are used to deter weed growth. They target specific weed varieties, so it's a selective herbicide. It's not non-selective like Roundup, where it will kill anything it touches. And this is a sustainable method, and it protects life on land as there's no residual buildup on plants, and there's also no runoff into bodies of water, which is an important thing that we're looking at. Now we'll be looking at integrated weed management. This has a strong emphasis on prevention and anticipation rather than a reactionary approach, and it promotes herbicide stewardship, and it really only uses chemical herbicides when absolutely necessary. Now we'll be moving on to the next sector, which is pesticide development. The first that I'd like to highlight is nano-enabled technology. So this is more effective than traditional pesticides, and it's also posing less of a risk for the environment. It uses lower dosages of these chemicals, and it's also a selective herbicide, so it can combat specific pests, and it can do it in a smaller fashion and more direct fashion than these broadly applied herbicides. And this integrated pest management is similar to integrated weed management in the sense that it uses non-chemical methods first, and after exhausting all of these sustainable methods, they will only use these chemical components if absolutely necessary. And this helps prioritize the environment without putting world hunger on the back burner. Finally, we'll be moving on to the final one, which is digital tools. Digital tools are the future of farming, and they're the best way to address UN sustainability goals, as far as our research suggests. So starting, we'll be looking at digital farming. This technology surveys fields and tracks the data on field health, and this can be used to water plants more effectively, reduce herbicide usage, and it can also result in higher crop yields. So this is a very important thing, and as we progress technologically, this is a great advancement for us to have, as well as for insect forecasting, which tracks pest data and uses artificial intelligence to find patterns of these pests. This allows for preventative measures to be taken, and it uses technologies like nano-enabled technology to target these specific pests instead of going for the broad field, which reduces pesticide usage and is overall better for the environment.
Now we will discuss the second recommendation of our strategy, which is investing in alternative agricultural methods. So the traditional method of agriculture is referred to as intensive subsistence agriculture, or ISA. This involves farming using little tools and it uses much more labor. It's used mostly because of its cheap nature and higher yield, but this obviously comes at a cost. The cost being overharvesting, biodiversity degradation, and overgrazing, which proves difficult for farmers to sustain their land in the long run. So why is this important? It's important because 70% of the world's food needs is met through small-scale farmers, and 30% of those farmers across the globe use these intensive farming methods. So the next question is, how can we move away from harmful agricultural practices? So to determine which alternative methods were worthy of investment in the long term, we decided to take a holistic approach on a decision matrix. We evaluated 5 agricultural alternatives by this specific criteria. And from that, we determined that regenerative agriculture, or RA, met the majority of our requirements. So what exactly is regenerative agriculture? RA, or regenerative agriculture, is an alternative farming method. It broadens product portfolios and shifts away from monocultures, such as relying solely on a single crop for farming purposes. It utilizes 3 basic steps of implementation in 3 categories: cultivation, inputs, and structure. And it also relies on diversification of crops to increase crop resilience. So the greatest benefits of using this alternative method are the long-term biodiversity, and it has proven to be up to 60% more profitable in the long term. Our approach not only aims to benefit the environment, but also considers how farmers will rely on these methods as a source of income and a source of food security. Food security is a key theme in RA. With less of an impact on land, farmers can retain more of their crops and avoid high crop spoiling. But there are also concerns associated with this method. Farmers may be concerned with lower crop yield, and to mitigate this, we propose a gradual transition while implementing precision management techniques. This process integrates agricultural technologies such as drones, soil sensors, and natural processes such as crop rotation and soil health management to allow for yield to stay constant X amount of years, and the RA method will eventually prove higher yield and they can transition fully. The second concern being farmers will need to be taught these techniques, and we will cover this in our last recommendation. Here's an example of the expected impacts of a successful RA transition. This particular pilot farm study was conducted by BCG. It was regarding oilseed and cereal crops such as wheat and barley. The RA method proved much more effective in stages 1 and 2 after the 3 implementation steps that we covered before were taken, and we would expect similar results from future intercropping methods.
All right, now we're going to be moving on to our third and final step of the B2B process, which is furthering education for farmers. Expanding R&D and investing in alternative agriculture is futile if farmers don't know these new strategies and technologies. So that's why we're primarily focused on educating these farmers. So our key question in regard to education is addressing how Bayer can utilize their global reach to educate farmers on the safe and sustainable use of their technology. So Bayer has a strong connection with global farmers already, with a key sign of this being their Farmer Voice program. This is a global survey of 800 farmers from 8 different countries and assesses the global necessities of each of these farmers. So understanding what they need and want is the most vital step in education, and this is a significant step that Bayer has already made to absolve the past sins of Monsanto. So this survey showed that 84% of farmers already applied or intend to apply methods to become more sustainable. And our education will focus on those that still intend to apply these practices to become more sustainable, but are unsure exactly how they will do so. One current program that Bayer already has is Bayer Forward Farming. This primarily focuses on young farmers, and seasoned farmers need to be addressed too, so that's where our recommendation comes in. So our key concentrations for this topic are that they stress not only the practical use of the technology, but also the sustainable use. So this will be done through on-farm demonstrations, peer-to-peer learning, and customized online trainings. First, we'll be going into the on-farm demonstrations. So the representatives from Bayer will meet with the biggest farm partners in a community to ensure the proper use of the technology that they have sold to them. Then they'll be checking in with these farmers every 6 months to ensure the continued sustainable and effective use of these technologies. Next will be the peer-to-peer learning approach. So after these large farmers are taught all of this, they'll become almost flagships for this sustainable farming method in their communities. And from there, we can leverage this to promote farmer-to-farmer learning. This reduces the necessity for representatives from the company to be traveling to smaller farms. So that will save Bayer money in that sense. And Bayer can organize discussion forums, workshops, and field visits that will be with these larger farms for smaller farms in the community. This is all because farmers trust other farmers more than they would a large company that they don't know. So the message will be spread more effectively, and there will be a lot more trust in the operation. Finally, we'll be looking at customized online trainings that Bayer will promote. So they will act as consultants for these different farms, and this will build trust and advance sustainability initiatives altogether, not only with these farmers, but with the communities as well.
So now we'll move on to an overview of the implementation of our strategy. Here's a general outline of the B2B timeline. We want to emphasize that the first two recommendations are both vital to precede education to farmers. For R&D recommendation, we aim to secure funds before development and continue to improve the specific technologies that we will be using. For our A recommendation, our regenerative agriculture method, we are focusing more on policy integration and institutionalization. And lastly, our education recommendation prioritizes constant communication pathways with our local farmers. And this concludes our B2B strategy timeline.
Next, let's take a look at the financials to really figure out how much this is going to cost Bayer. So first, we're going to look at a financial analysis of the R&D strategy that we propose. So beginning with plant genetics, discovering new genes can cost millions. We all know here that this is a pretty expensive endeavor, but its payoff is immense. So while inserting the genes into the germplasm can cost $10,000 to $20,000 per gene, the upside is that once a gene has been introduced, it can be bred into many varieties at no additional costs. So the initial cost is great, but the impact of it is everlasting and not costly. Next is herbicide development. Cost associated with discovering, developing, and registering and commercializing a new herbicide is close to $300 million and is one of the most expensive development processes that we proposed. Pesticide development can cost around $133 million, and research and registration of the pesticide are roughly at $126 million and $41 million respectively. And next is digital tools that we really wanted to hone in on because it is the future. A basic agricultural management software costs around $25,000 to $60,000. Training and onboarding costs for farmers and staff is around $500 to $10,000, depending on the magnitude of the project. Given that it is the future and what we want to do is advance farmers, digital tools and plant genetics seem to be the most cost-effective for Bayer given its current dynamic. Next, we're going to look at the financial analysis of regenerative agriculture, which is the one that we propose. So it has a compound annual growth rate of 15.7% from 2023 to 2030, which is huge numbers, essentially showing that this is the future. There's a market for regenerative agriculture, and it is the shift that farmers are going to be making in the near 9 to 10 years. Next, under that, you're going to see a map which has pinned the largest market and the fastest growing market. The largest market is actually the US and Mexico, and the fastest growing market is in Europe. The market size was roughly $924 million in 2022. Now, on to the left, you'll see that we have a graph showing the regenerative agricultural market size by region from 2018 to 2030 in $1 billion. And so you have like 5 different regions on this graph. And the comments of this is that both the Natural Resources Conservation Service provides financial assistance and the European Union's Common Agricultural Policy includes provisions for supporting farmers who adopt agroecological and regenerative practices. So there's a current rise in support from governments, organizations, and Farmer Welfare Association will essentially drive this market growth and that CAGR. Next is a financial analysis of educating farmers. So one of the 3 biggest economic impacts with educating farmers is one, this reduction in poverty. It's known that a lot of farmers all over the world, especially in developing countries, live in poverty and don't have access to a lot of food resources. So education is essentially the first step in reducing that poverty. Next is an increased improvement in tech adoption and best practices. Knowledge is power, and if your farmers are educated on the latest tools that they can use to better improve their practices and make them more sustainable, we're going to see definitely increased improvements in profitability in this sector. And lastly is increased access to finance and support services. If you're more educated about the things that are available to you, you're going to take advantage of them, thereby pushing economies forward, specifically the agricultural industry. As mentioned previously, the US and the EU have many support systems for farmers, but unfortunately, a lot of people are not actually aware about them. And on the graph on the right, you see a graph that says that despite the decline in labor contribution to output growth driven by a decline in hours worked, education has been a positive contributing factor from 1948 to 2017. And we continue to believe that education is the power and that tool to continue to drive this sector forward. Moving on with our conclusion. So just to reiterate our goals again, our first goal is to support resilient food systems to ensure long-term food security towards zero hunger efforts. And our second goal was to adopt eco-friendly methods to protect life on land. Our B2B strategy increases R&D to enhance crop resilience, invest in alternative agri-technologies, and lastly, provide education for farmers. Our solution is to implement a gradual approach that prioritizes farmers' education and advancements in agricultural technology geared toward long-term biodiversity and food security. We know that our B2B strategy, if implemented by Bayer, can help right Monsanto's path while taking advantage of the technologies that they already have in place. We believe that these goals are attainable and that they can be accomplished using our strategy. Thank you.
All right. So we will stay in character now for the Q&A part, just a reminder. I'll start with a question for the team. If you can kind of, I mean, we heard a lot of information in the presentation, which was great, but if somebody can just summarize or encapsulate for me, why is the issue that you brought before us today considered an ethical issue, and how is your proposal going to resolve that issue?
Yeah, so I can take that question. So it is a ethical problem, as it's spearheading two of the biggest issues in our world today. It's putting world hunger at odds with the environment, and those are two things that we very much need to work towards. And in the past, especially with Monsanto, the Monsanto company was furthering the world hunger efforts. So they were reducing world hunger, but at the expense of the environment. And that's something that we are not willing to compromise for. So that with Bayer's acquisition of Monsanto, it really proved that with all of Bayer's resources, they are capable of turning around this acquisition to become something better than it was previously. And with all the resources they can push, like with our B2B strategy, these efforts that they can make and will make can make up for the initial acquisition cost. And like it mentioned earlier in our presentation, it was regarded as a very poor investment by Bayer, but with the resources, we see that turning around, as Monsanto didn't have as much as Bayer in that category. So I guess to summarize the answer to your question, the ethical concerns lie in the two sustainable development goals that are going at odds with each other. And Bayer has so many resources that they can spearhead that and really work to advance and progress forward.
One follow-up on that. Are you suggesting that we consider our acquisition of Monsanto to be a very poor investment?
I'm not saying that Bayer thought that it was a poor investment.
I'm
The
very
Wall Street,
right.
what was that? Sorry.
I am there. You
Yes, yep. So, yeah, it wasn't that you guys said it was a poor investment. The Wall Street Journal considered it a poor investment, and it really proved to be unfortunate in some regard with the lawsuits surrounding glyphosate in Roundup. And that's something that Bayer as a company as well realized after. They didn't truly you guys didn't see the true effects of these lawsuits until after the acquisition. Um, and that was a downfall as well. So you guys didn't expect the number of lawsuits that were risen against you, which brought down the quality of the investment significantly. But there's still a lot of hope for the investment.
Just to add on onto what my teammate Micah has said, obviously nobody goes into an investment thinking that it's going to be a poor one or that it's going to go south. And I think that our proposal to you is that given the unprecedented nature of those lawsuits and how the market's looking currently for agriculture and what Bayer's numbers are looking like, how can we help you as a business not only, to help the goal of ending world hunger, which is totally possible and feasible given our resources, but also push Bayer forward as an agricultural powerhouse in this market. And using our back-to-back B2B strategy that prioritizes education, research and development, and really using the technologies that Monsanto had when you acquired them is really what's going to push Bayer forward as a company while still addressing those two UN goals.
I think it's fair to characterize our acquisition of Monsanto as challenged. And I think one of those challenges was the loss of a number of Monsanto's scientists who did not come with the acquisition and who are working in venture capital on many of these problems. Would you propose that we try to hire Monsanto scientists back or look elsewhere? Or how do you, and the R&D component of the solution that you proposed, like where are we going to get the scientists who have this very specific knowledge?
I can start with this one. So research and development is all about your people and your staff that are supporting it. And yes, we did lose a lot of those scientists that went off and did venture capital, as you said. And I think that what we have to prioritize as Bayer is not only one, bringing that talent back to help us, but also we have a really unique opportunity with universities all over the United States really focusing on agriculture, production and improvements. And so it wouldn't be super crazy, I think, to suggest that maybe Bayer look towards local universities and programs where research is constantly being brought out and really bring new talent that has new ideas. Because yes, would it be wonderful to hire back those scientists that we lost? Yes, but we have a bunch of new talent all over the United States looking to really improve the agricultural industry. And so looking towards public universities that are funding a lot of that research and development could be a huge opportunity for Bayer to take advantage of.
Okay, and what was the timeline for the plant genetics solution that you proposed? I mean, identifying those genes takes a really long time.
So that's something that has been in the works with Bayer already. They are, I guess we are the leading developer of these plant genetic advancements. So they're already in the works, and with the further advancements from either these public universities or any Monsanto R&D workers that we can get back, that's something that we are advancing on currently. Like we have the current research and development for it, and we're just progressing through 2030. There is no specific timeline on how we are progressing with those genes in particular, but it is something that's been happening in the past, will happen now, and will continue into the future.
Do you intend to use AI in some way to help in the identification of genes that might be more likely to be successful?
Oh, most definitely. That it's a tremendous opportunity that Bayer has only, and really the world has only just begun to touch into. So we will definitely be using different applications of AI to see the possible benefits of one gene versus another, how they may be affecting one seed versus another seed, and like the seed development in that like sector of genetic modification. So AI will be huge in the future of our developments as well, for sure.
AI also proposes a unique opportunity in the sense that we can now have access to so much information and data significantly faster than we ever would have had it before. And so people are using AI in every facet of their research, from data to graphs to, I think that Bayer, given their technology and their modernization strategy, are definitely going to be using AI, and we heavily recommend that they do as well.
On this slide where it says raise funds, I forget if you quantified this elsewhere in the presentation, but did you assess what sort of funding will be required for this initiative? And what is your proposal for how to raise, like, what do you mean by raise funds?
So this is all very expensive. And so by raising funds, we mean that we kind of need to be reallocating some of the money that we have, like our cash flows, into research and development. So yes, that might increase what our debt looks like. But by raising funds, I think we mean like taking on the loans, because this is an expensive endeavor. And given that this is a publicly listed company, like the only way to do this is essentially to get debt, to acquire debt. However, that's not necessarily always a bad thing. Debt has kind of a negative connotation, but it doesn't have to have a negative connotation. And that's because if the money that the debt we're taking on is going to R&D and going into these things that are then going to transform themselves into higher margins in the future, that debt will pay off itself. However, we're kind of in a stuck point where it's like we're not moving forward at the pace that we should be, or addressing any of the goals that are super important to us, like ending hunger, at the rate that we should be. And so that in order to do that, we need the funds. And so acquiring debt for this research and development and these digital programs and educating farmers is very important and needs to be done in order to realize these projects.
Do you think there might be other sources of funds? When you think about the fact that you're suggesting funds ought to be raised for solving the problem of world hunger, is that Bayer's problem to take on alone? Or are there other resources that might be available we could tap into to assist us with achieving a goal like this?
So there's definitely like a world goal and a world approach. And when we say like this is Bayer's initiative, Bayer has definitely said this in their mission statement, that it's their goal to push this industry forward and to help end some of these crises. But Bayer's not in it alone. There's also a lot of government assistance and initiatives being taken on by the US and the EU. I mentioned this in this slide, sorry. So there's a lot of different resources and stipends and government help and assistance that's being outrolled in order to kind of fund some of these projects, because it's not just Bayer that's contributing to some of the issues, it's a lot of other people as well. But I think what makes Bayer unique is the programs that, one, they already have in place, and two, the initiatives that they set in order to make some of those things a reality as well. So yeah, government assistance is definitely a huge factor in funding.
So you envision that we
build
would
off of
apply for other sites?
I'm sorry, could you repeat?
That we would have applied for some of those stipends?
Oh yeah, for sure. I definitely think so. If Bayer is not already applied for them and they're not in them, I'm sure that that's in the future for them, for sure.
I would also like to emphasize, Gabby, if you could jump to slide 28 for me. It'll show an example of this investment isn't only for the good of the world. It's not only for the sake of these UN Sustainable Development Goals. It is also for the sake of the company itself. We understand that the best way to get a company or to get anyone to do anything essentially is to give them what they want. And Bayer as a company, it is obviously a for-profit company with not only the original goal of like progressing the initiatives of the UN. They're also in it to make money. So I was hoping we could get to the R&D slides. The example I was going to show was with designer seeds. It's something that Bayer has been doing for a long time. And same thing for these transformative traits. They are things that with further development and when taking on this debt, we are investing into research and development, which will then further our own products, which then we sell around the globe, which will raise money not only for us, but also will be advancing these sustainable development goals. So it's a good 2-for-1 deal there.
Thank you, team. This is all very insightful. I wanted to ask a little bit about how the designer seeds equates to long-term biodiversity and regenerative agriculture. Could you go into that a little bit for me?
I can, are we on the, okay, is that the regenerative agriculture slide? So it's just the way that regenerative agriculture is designed. It has its 3 categories, which is cultivation, inputs, and structure. Those can change. That's a bit of an umbrella term. And then the technologies that are used for each category can change. So the seeds would come into cultivation. In our appendix, could you go to our appendix? All the way to yeah, this one. Oh, last slide. Yeah, so this is kind of the outlook on what regenerative agriculture is. As you can see, for growing a diverse range of crops, it depends on the systems of crops that we use. So the genetic crops and the seed technologies that we would be using would be contributing to this specific factor of regenerative agriculture. But regenerative agriculture does not require specific practices. It's just based off of diversifying product portfolio and building crop resistance.
Also, I can add on to that. Sorry, I started talking earlier with my mic still muted. But on the topic of biodiversity, so I understand where I can see where you're going with that. The designer seeds, as they are now, do actually limit biodiversity, as they are almost taking over the planting industry, and a lot of farmers have to rely on these seeds. They have to buy them year over year, and that will reduce like local crops, and that sort of thing. So when we say its design is to not compromise biodiversity, we are saying that is what the research and development will be going towards. We want to push for a way that these seeds will not be taking over their surroundings. They won't be taking away from the natural landscape. They won't be taking away from any animals that may be in the area. So right now, they are not as biodiverse as we would like them to be. That's something we had mentioned earlier in the presentation about how a lot of these technologies and a lot of what like Monsanto especially has done in the past has limited biodiversity. What we are looking to do is further develop these designer seeds in order to promote biodiversity for the future.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Well, no further questions from the judges, so we can break there and move on with that. I'll go ahead and start. So first I want to compliment the team for all the effort that you so clearly put into this analysis and presentation. There's a lot of research that went into this. I can tell a lot of data that you put together for our benefit. So thank you for diving in and doing all the work. Congratulations for being done, at least with the 25-minute portion of it. Hopefully some helpful tips in terms of feedback. A few of the speakers and maybe could slow down a little bit. There is a lot of information being presented, and as a listener, sometimes it's hard to keep up when a speaker is moving very quickly through the material. So I would just suggest slowing down, maybe even sometimes if you feel nervous, talk a lot slower than you think is reasonable, and that probably will be at the right pace for the listener. And the slides, I would say, were kind of a mix. Some of them were really, really good in terms of not having too much content. And so those slides were helpful to supplement what I was hearing in the presentation. Other slides are, what we sometimes call an eye chart. Like there's a lot of information on it. And so I found myself as a listener sort of competing with, do I listen to what he or she is saying, or do I read what's on the slide? And so that's something to look out for when we're preparing slides, is think about really how the slide is supporting what your message is, and make sure that it's not feeding or distracting attention from your presentation. And on the overall organization of the slides, it would have been helpful before diving in. I think at the very beginning of the presentation, what we heard was, here's some background information data. But I didn't have a context as a listener for why I was hearing where I was supposed to sort of violate. Midway through the presentation, I had a really nice executive summary slide. That would have been very helpful to have at the very front of the presentation. An executive summary sort of spelled out, here's the issue, here's sort of 3 components of our proposal, and here's why we need to. If I had that at the beginning, then when I started hearing all the background information, data, it would have made more sense to me. So I may have lost a lot of what you were trying to convey to me in the presentation, just because it was information without context that was hitting me. I didn't know what to do with it in my brain, and so it was gone by the time I got to the executive summary. I think everything from the executive summary afterwards made a lot more sense to me. You had a conclusion slide as well, but I thought it was really, really good. Don't be afraid to use the conclusion slide up front as an executive summary and then use it again at the end. Like, that's totally okay. Having that brief thing at the beginning to level set everybody is way more effective than having an agenda that says we're going to go through analysis, financials, and like, that's fine. You are going to get all those things, but that's not really the message. So it's better to start up front. What's the scoring one? Scoring part so that I follow. In terms of role playing, just really be mindful of, and Mike, I kind of gave you a hard time with questioning about pointing out that, I really am there, and you're saying some offensive things to me that were real life, right? So think about being in the shoes of their board member and how they're going to receive the message that you're giving them. So, saying things like the Monsanto acquisition has done more harm than good, that's probably not a very helpful thing to get the board with. Gabriella, you pivoted really well when I raised that sort of issue, and you handled that very nicely, to say, well, the acquisition has been challenging, but we see a lot of opportunities. That's a better way to leverage it. And there was some other information in the presentation as well. We talked about being able to leverage Monsanto's technology to help make a difference and really address their stated objectives. So just really think about that. Remember, who is the board? What are they driven by? They've got legal obligations, things that they have to look out for. So what are those? That's what you want to really speak to. It's not about what you're going to put up with as an external stakeholder thinking about ethics issues. You want to deliver your message in terms of what does the board, what is their obligation to shareholders, customers, all these things. Speak to those board is like that over time. Your approach very service. But overall, like I said, these are all just myths trying to give you helpful feedback. Overall, very impressive. Really like the presentation and the work that you did to write down.
Thank you.
I definitely share that sentiment. It was an impressive amount of insights that you all prepared for us. Apologies, I arrived late. I had a meeting at work that made me delayed. But I came in before the executive summary, so that was helpful that it wasn't at the very start, although probably would have been helpful for others. I was really interested in how you were making the connections between how Monsanto and Bayer could leverage the strengths of what was already existing with Monsanto and how they could take the goals of, you know, solving world hunger, but also making it more sustainable. So it's not at the expense of the planet. I thought your analysis was robust, and I really like the going into how it was presented on the slides. I found myself very attracted to the visuals of the slides, and I liked how it seemed to progress pretty smoothly from the strategy to the financials, the appendix. You were able to navigate there and show some additional information. So I appreciate how the presentation was facilitated.
I similarly enjoyed the visuals. I thought it helped me understand where to look, and where we were in the messaging that you were delivering. I also really liked a couple of slides in particular. I like the alternative methods matrix. So you showed these were all the things we considered, and we chose regenerative agriculture because it hit most of the metrics we care about. And then I also really like the fact that you had a multi-pronged approach to the problem. So it wasn't just one solution, it's we have multiple solutions and this is how it plays out. So well done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys, and thank you for all your feedback. It's very much appreciated.
Yeah, terrific job.
Thank you guys for your time.